Hello. Welcome to Bees Cast. That's right. Bees Cast. I'm Tyler Petersen. This is Nevada Cullen. We, for a second year in a row, will be your broadcasting team. And yes, this is what we look like. So here you go.
You put a name to a face, name to a state, whatever.
For our listening audience, that won't mean anything. So you'll have to look us up later, I suppose. But we're glad to be with you. As you can see, we host this podcast, but based on how we're dressed, you can also catch our other podcast, which we'll call Wake Up Call at 6 a.m. Pioneer League Podcast with Tyler, Nevada.
Gotta love those early kickoffs.
Well, you're a lot better than I am. You at least have them at 9 sometimes.
Yeah.
We are doing Coast to Coast Beescast today. We're covering both Pacific and the Atlantic today, California and Florida.
Just like the ACC?
Just like the ACC. You're right. But we appreciate you guys tuning in. We're going to talk a little bit about what this roster looks like for the upcoming season. And we'll be joined by a very special guest. It's our own manager, Mr. Aaron Miles. But we're going to first start with a lot of questions I get are, hey, who have we signed? Hey, why didn't this guy come back? And I want to tell them, hey, it's complicated. But indie ball is a lot different, and I'm sure a lot of folks had a lot of adjustments to exactly what this level looks like on the field, and then sort of how things are handled in the off season. One thing I think a lot of folks will see this year is a decent amount of turnover. The Ballers had a lot of players who could say graduated up, either to the next part of their life, to what is considered a higher league. And of course, we know the guys that actually went straight into affiliate ball. So we'll get into who's still here, who's not, and who is coming in that you should be excited about for next season. But we're going to start with some of the positional players, since the Ballers actually only returned 2 of their roster from the position side. It's Tyler Best and Tyler Lozano, the 2 Tylers.
Gotta say 3, because I feel like we got to include Zach St. Pierre in there as the pinch runner.
You're right. See, I thought you were going to go with 3 Tylers, including myself. But no, you're right. The designated pinch runner, Zach St. Pierre, as well, who is also returning. Did we have any pitchers play positions last year?
I was trying to think of that, and I think that's the best I could come up with. Jake Daly did hit.
Jake Daly did win a knockout round.
That's right.
That is true.
Hit in a real game action, but it did not go as well as the knockout round went.
You're right. He did as well. He did get an at bat. Kelsey also got a few at bats.
That's right. Those went better than Jake's in the game.
I believe they did. I believe Kelsey made contact twice.
I did.
Jake did not. Nevertheless, let's start with the catchers at least. Our good friend Trip Clark, and I'll put Dante Stewart in the group as well. The 2 of them will not be returning. They both have signed with the Lake Country Dockhounds of the American Association, which is a good move for both of them. Both of those guys are Texas guys, Midwest guys, and the American Association covers a lot of the South and Midwest, and is a step maybe not quite AAA level, but somewhere around, I'd say, the AA level. There are 4 major league players who went to the American Association who get taken out of the American Association. So it'll be a good step up for both of them. I loved what both of them brought to the table. I would actually love to see Nevada, the record of the team when they came on, because I know when Dante came on. I'm trying to remember exactly when Trip came on, but the team kind of took off.
It was even later when Trip came on, I believe. And I know we talked about this last year. What was my record? Because I was also a late season addition, and it just seemed like the team, it was an inaugural season. There were a lot of burdens to have to overcome, a lot of adversity to work through, and the team really gelled. And those guys, Dante and Trip, really helped with the culture of the team. Like they really seamlessly fit in. And then, of course, they were such a big boost on offense and defense. I'll never forget the play Dante made deep in the 3-4 hole to end that one game at home, and our reactions to that. But both just plus athletes, They've got raw power. And look, don't be surprised. Yes, they're just moving to the American Association, which is still a step. But don't be surprised if it's not too much longer and they do ink deals with Major League ball clubs, because they're such talents in my eyes.
I would love to see that. That was, if you're interested, game 65 of last year. If you didn't think I'd have that, but I actually have a little top moments of last year.
Right.
Very, very handy that we made.
So that's not quite the same.
You have a more tasty prop in front of you than I do. I do have this baseball, which I will probably play with on camera. But yeah, I think of Dante had just a great attitude. He was, I will say, of any player last year who signed with us, was the most quickest to say, where do I sign? We got Dante originally from a recommendation for a player that we were trying to get, who ended up signing somewhere else, but then said, hey, I'm going to go play with this team, but I actually have a buddy who I think would be great for you, who's looking to play. And I called up Dante. He's like, yeah, it sounds great. When can I come? Like, oh yeah, let's do it. You need to think? Not really. All right, sweet.
He does give that, though. He gives that. You talk to him, you know that he doesn't realize just quite how good he is, which that's what it takes to make it to the next level. You can't have that ego unless you're like that guy. Like he's working towards becoming a major league ball player, and yet he doesn't look at himself as better than everyone else. He puts in the work, and just a very humble dude. Same could be said of Tripp.
So that's a starting catcher and a starting second baseman. Tripp was starting catcher while Lozano was hurt and while Horner were hurt. Colton Horner, by the way, signed with the Boise Hawks. We will see him later in the year. So we'll give a clap to Horner, and we look forward to seeing him. He rejoins his old manager, Cash Beecham, who's taking over in Boise. He won a championship with Cash in 2023 over my then Rocky Mountain Vibes, single tier. But there's 2 starting spots. And then let's talk about the other 3 starting spots on the infield, which also are not returning, if you can believe that. So that would be Brett Barrera. We'll start with Brett, who is making a jump that he needs to make, which is going to the Atlantic League. He's signing with the Southern Maryland Blue Crabs. And for a guy who was a decently high pick by the New York Yankees, who had been in the system for a while, who went to a big program at Stanford, and who had shown his ability to absolutely dominate this level of baseball, that is a great get for him to go to a league where he will face former major league pitching. And Brett was the guy, that was the final piece of the puzzle last year that pushed it over the top for Oakland. We win the second half. We're the best team in the entire league in the second half. And I would attribute at least 3 wins outright to him alone.
Oh, it's an excellent point, because you're talking about, 1, an all-star. He just absolutely slugged. And 2, he solved the knockout round crisis, if you will, because the Ballers started the year doing really well, and then all of a sudden, lost those games to YOLO in the knockout round. Jake Daly was heroic, but you never want a pitcher hitting in the knockout round. Daly was the exception. And then, to settle a game that's tied, who do you turn to? You turn to Brett Barrera. It was no question for the Chuckers, and he was able to win them some games before the Ballers acquired him in a trade last year. And then Brett won some big games for the Ballers, hitting home runs in regulation and in the knockout round. So he just became that hitter that you just feared, and it's important for every lineup to have something like that. He's a hitter that pitchers will fear in the Atlantic League.
Home run on his debut against Boise. Yes?
We've got way too much ball knowledge. This is
okay. Boise, by the way. I apologize to our Western Idaho listeners. And then 3 home runs, which is a Ballers record in 1 game against the Northern Colorado Owls, which I believe was, I don't know if that was the 31-5 game or the Johnny Colombo game, as I like to call it.
Oh, no. I did check I just looked at my stats and my notes on him, and you're right that he did homer in his debut against Boise. I don't remember which game was the 3 home run game for Brett, but It would be fitting if it was the Johnny Colombo game.
Yeah. Also, apologies to Johnny Colombo for using your name in such a way, but
he's really catching strays for no reason.
Yes, sorry, that's the way I think of it. But it is obviously going to be a huge loss for Oakland, as will the loss of Noah Martinez, who is, we understand, moving on to the next chapter of his professional career outside of baseball. So we very much wish him happy trails in his retirement. I believe he's working up in a facility in his native Connecticut, and we may chat with him at some point as well. But Noah Martinez, I think one of the things that you want to have in the middle of the order for any team is like one big, bulky, intimidating first baseman that can pop one out of here from time to time.
And lefty too. And I think that's
lefty.
We'll talk with Aaron Miles later in this podcast episode, is the fact that it's important to have a big lefty in the lineup. And, what do the Ballers do without No Martinez? Well, I think they've got some answers in terms of big lefties, and we'll talk about that later. But no, will sorely be missed. Just a great guy and just a huge surge offensively second half of the season and even parts of the first half.
Yeah, I believe it was only something like, you think about 3 home runs through the first 3 weeks, maybe 21 games, and then he just went nuts.
Finished with 21.
Yeah, a Pioneer League Player of the Week, or Player of the Month, I think, in July.
That sounds right. And then killed YOLO.
Yep.
Well, not anymore. The High Wheelers in early July had that week where he hit 542 with 8 extra base hits, 11 RBI, had 5 RBI games. And of course, the most notable, though, was that walk-off single against NoCo, that's the first, when we talk about the March Madness, which is going on right now, and it's the one shining moment, that's the one shining moment last year for the Oakland Ballers is that Noah Martinez, the first one shining moment in Ballers history after, I guess, the home opener.
Brad Burkell also moving on to the next part of his career. And Brad, for some of the offensive struggles he had and the amount of times he did strike out, he was third on the team in RBI. And I want to say that he won, again, if you talk about like WAR and stuff like that, he won at least 3 games with his glove alone. I mean, he had probably the most dependable glove on the left side of the diamond. And especially late in the season, was extremely toolsy. He had a big run in Northern Colorado. I think he had 3 home runs in that 6-game series where the Ballers took 5 of 6. So he was a huge part. I think he went 10-51, if I'm not mistaken.
The reality is he had a really bad stretch. Brad struggled. There's no doubt. He knew it. But the last 3 weeks of the season, he had 20 RBI. He was right back there driving in runs for the Ballers, and he'll be sorely missed. And yes, there were some times where it was rough going for Brad, but he really picked it up when it mattered most for this team, and was essential in the first half, and he'll be missed just alongside Noah.
I'll make 3 quick notes before we get to the outfielders. Jalen Smith signing with the Down East Wood Ducks, and Smith is an older player. Go to the Frontier League closer to home. Total sense for him. Josh Leslie is going to get an opportunity with the Tri-City Valley Cats, which will be a jump up for him. So I'm very interested to see how he does there. And then Dondre Hubbard, I think, say up in the air for inclusion in 2025, but he's a 95er like myself. Obviously, love to have him back, but I know he has bigger things to attend to. Outfielders. One outfielder is coming back. That is Tyler Best. We knew the week he had with the team. I want to say he had 8 hits in 16 at-bats against YOLO in that last week, and then got the first ever Ballers RBI hit. A crazy introduction right at the end of the season, but a little bit of a spark plug, and probably would get a shot at being a utility player here coming up in the season.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, against the High Wheelers, he was fantastic. And having that utility bat is so clutch, and a player that the Ballers found through the Pecos League, which happened several times last year. Just It's cool. It's cool to see this Ballers roster, the construction. I know I'm tooting your own horn here, but to see them build.
Well, hey, don't confuse me with Tyler Petersen, assistant general manager. I know we look alike, sound alike, and are the same person, but just, it's a common mistake, Nevada.
This is Tyler Petersen, the broadcaster at Tottenham, and much different than the GM. But either way, he could play a huge role for the Ballers this season.
The three other outfielders that were on the team come playoff time were Brett Carson, Kyle Garrett, and Stephen Wilmer. Carson and Wilmer, who both came in that big midseason trade with Rocky Mountain. Neither will be on the team. I believe Brett Carson signed up with the Savannah Bananas, and is playing with that Party Animals team. That's what I heard. I haven't seen anything, but I believe that's what I heard.
I haven't seen Brett's dance moves, but I guess I missed out if that's the case.
Brett's a good personality. I can see him having some good success. I don't know what I know everybody has to have a thing. I don't know what his thing would be.
The stash? Like, is that?
But don't you have to do a cartwheel and throw the bat up in the air and then take a swing? Like everyone's got to have their thing.
If the mustache is good enough, then I don't think.
Hey, you're right. I'm not hating to believe you. He'll be good for it. And Kyle Garrett, who made the final out that clinched the Ballers playoff spot. Local player from San Leandro. He won't be joining the Ballers, at least at the start. Again, for all these guys, I say at least at the start of the season. You never know when someone might pop up that is a former name. And of course, I think there's not one guy on this list right now that we wouldn't trust to help us at some point. All right. Those are the guys, the subtractions from the offseason. Now the additions. We're going to get into some of these additions, and there might be one or two spoilers for guys we haven't announced yet, but that's the bonus you get for tuning in and listening to the 18th minute of this podcast. We're going to start. Where do you want to go? You want to go around the diamond, or do you want to go in the outfield first?
I want to start in the outfield. I really like some of the guys. I kind of want to start with, I might be wrong for this. I don't know these guys maybe as well as you do. I think the one that makes the most sense actually is Michael O'Hara. I think we've already introduced him.
Let's start with Michael O'Hara.
To the fans, and what a player for Boise last year.
Michael O'Hara, who I mistakenly said on air during a broadcast, I reviewed the footage. I said he's got a big cheering section here because he's from San Mateo. And that's a faux pas on my part. Nevada, not maybe knowing peninsula geography very much, but San Mateo is definitely not San Ramon. And he is from Danville anyway. So it was wrong twice.
And you did play at San Ramon Valley.
San Ramon Valley High, yes.
In Danville.
But I did get it wrong, to which I apologized to him in person at FansFest, and he said I didn't know what I was talking about. Or that he said that he didn't know what I was talking about.
Yeah.
I also didn't know what I was talking about.
There's no way he was tuning into your broadcast. I don't think his family would have cared that much. I mean, they were probably at the game, so they definitely weren't watching the broadcast in that case.
But you remember him in the series against Boise. He had a nice little bat right at the top of that lineup, too, for Gary Vanthal.
Yeah, I in my notes I have when we played him last, hit safely in 15 of the last 16 games. When you have a guy like that who's getting on base, who is producing from the top of the lineup and playing good defense, it's a good sign. And always nice to see a guy coming from the Bay Area, and in his case playing at Santa Clara in college, and now joining the Ballers after playing with Boise in his first Pioneer League season.
I'm going to save one of these players for a little bit later. That would be Davis Druick, who is an outfielder but a utility player. And we'll get into him when Aaron joins. But the next guy I want to bring up is Marcus Titialii. And that's spelled Titialii. Marcus is a former NAIA All-American at Arizona Christian. He's a little bit of an older player coming out of college, but good experience and had huge numbers at the NAIA level. Now, what translates? What goes from NAIA to Pioneer League? At least in the past, from what I've experienced, pretty well. Bottom line is, if you're a good baseball player, you'll probably play baseball pretty well. So one player who was an NAIA player was Dante Hubbard. Another one was Jacob Barfield, who led the Rocky Mountain Vibes in 2023 in home runs. Another player who was a guy by the name of the name escapes me now. Oh well, there's a guy who was drafted by the Tigers that I can't think of now as an NAI. There's a lot of good NAI players. The level really doesn't matter. It's more about the individual. So I don't know if you have his stats, Nevada.
Well, I did want to actually bring up his BREF page because, first of all, I think it's important that we know how to spell it.
Yes.
This is Marcus and then TTLE. So notice 2 I's at the end of his name, and Marcus is spelled with a Q. So let's learn the name, because as I scroll down here, you can see the stats. And that last year at Arizona Christian right here, 2024, hitting 375, slugging 780 with 89 ribbies, 12 doubles, 26 bombs. I mean, that's what I'm talking about right there.
Yeah, that'll work. There were actually 2 players from Arizona Christian last year that pitched for the Ogden Raptors. I believe it was Eli Elliott and Adrian Santa Cruz, I believe their names were.
Wasn't asked to name them, but of course you did.
I've been here for 6 years, man. I've seen a lot of Pioneer League baseball.
You have.
For better or for worse. Mostly for better.
Yeah. Except for those early seasons, 20 to 13 games and so forth and so on.
I have seen a 31 to 18 with my own eyes.
I've seen 31 runs twice on both ends.
I have seen 31 runs twice in this league.
Thankfully, once was for the Ballers last year, and they scored 31, which was awesome.
Yes, I still not quite sure what happened that day. But TTLE is going to have a really good shot to make an impact in one of those corners. So I think O'Hara and TTLE are probably more corner guys. Druick probably would be all outfield, but center specifically. And then there's...
I want to hit on Daryl Buggs for sure.
Please hit on Daryl Buggs.
Because this is a guy, so I'm high on him. Center fielder, good defender, played at UAB. He's actually friends with Brooks Walton, who pitched there. He's the son of Gators softball head coach Tim Walton. So I was actually able to talk to Brooks the other day about Daryl, and found out that they're actually friends, and he was very high on his former teammate, which makes sense. But he played in the MLB draft league, a lot of potential for stolen bases, solid defender, good hitter. Reminds me a lot of Peyton Harden in his skill set. Obviously, another player that the Ballers are not starting.
Do you know what? Because Harden wasn't on the playoff roster, he wasn't on the roster in front of me. I feel bad I didn't bring up Payday in that first breath.
But he got brought up, period, because he was an essential player at the top of the lineup. And you're looking at Buggs, O'Hara, and whoever else. That's a big void to fill, that leadoff position, because Payday was so good in that leadoff spot for the Ballers in 2024.
Payday was also one of the nicest and sneakily funniest guys on the team. I don't know if he would open up to everyone, but he was hilarious.
Yeah.
And I don't know how healthy he is right now. I know he is still sort of going through a rehab process in the offseason. I hope we see Payday back at some point. That would be really cool, because it was probably, other than, not having Dondre Bill, his injury probably was the biggest blow to the team at the end of last year.
You could argue it's the reason that the High Wheelers were able to beat the Ballers in the semifinals of the Pioneer League playoffs, is missing Payday at the top of that lineup. Because having him there is just, when he's scoring runs, the team was at its best last year.
Yeah. All right. Buggs, again, good defender, good chance for stolen bases. There's one other player I want to bring up who is, again, sort of crosses over into whether you want to call him a third baseman, a center fielder, shortstop, catcher, first baseman. That's Pat Monteith, who we have announced. Pat is a super utility player from North Greenville, which is a huge Division II program that is managed by former A's catcher Landon Powell, interestingly enough. And he had 4 really solid seasons at North Greenville. And again, I would say 97% of the guys that we look at and talk to are guys who would have been 22nd or 30th or 40th round picks if we had a normal draft. This is not the kind of guy that will be playing on this team if we had a normal draft. Pat had huge career numbers in North Greenville, power and speed, which is a lovely combination to have, but something that we always try to find, obviously. So he's going to be in the mix for an outfield spot, or really you might just see him pretty much anywhere on the diamond. So you've got now, Nevada, you've got two guys really that could play any position in Druick and Monteith. You have two true outfielders as well, or three true outfielders as well. And then you also have Tyler Best, who can play maybe not every position, but middle infield or outfield. So it's pretty versatile. And that'll make for some good competition in camp.
Yep. And I feel like we're just scratching the surface with the amount of talent that the Ballers have acquired on the offensive side. I think Cam Buford, is that right?
Let's go to the infielders.
Okay, I was gonna say this, and this is just outfield and utility, which is insane, and we haven't even touched. I'm jumping the gun here, but there's a lot to be excited about.
Jump that gun.
Jumped it.
So we went around the diamond. We said, "All right, you're gone, you're gone, you're gone, you're gone." Who's in? It would be Cam Buford, Tremaine Cobb, Christian Almanza. Let's just start with those three right now. Cobb, Buford, Almanza. We've announced all three players. I think folks have a pretty good idea of what they're getting with those three guys. Buford, home run king all time at Grambling State, which is a SWAC school in HBCU. Christian Almanza, all-time home run king out of St. Mary's, right here in Moraga, just over the hill. Go through the Caldecott Tunnel, you'll get there. And then Tremaine Cobb, not a home run king, but a king of the glove, a glove czar, if you will. He was the second best shortstop defender in all of college baseball last year, right behind a certain Virginia shortstop, I believe, who was drafted in the first round, and who had pretty decent numbers as well. Correct me if I'm wrong there, Nevada.
Is this Griffo Farrell? I forget which Virginia player played shortstop and got drafted by the Orioles.
I actually don't know, but I will take your word for it. I do know that he was second behind that player whose name I cannot think of. But those three guys, I mean, you want to talk about impact players. Cobb and Buford, both coming from the draft league. Almanza did not play in 24 after his college season because he actually, we were in talks with him last year, and he was trying to wait it out, had some potential draft offers or offers in the free agent market right after the draft, but ultimately was not able to collect something. I'll bring up, I'll save one guy for later. That's Daniel Harris, who we acquired in a trade. Two other guys who can play infield. AJ Arico. AJ Arico is a guy that we brought in who's a super utility player out of Lynn University, which is Nevada may know, a Division II school in Florida.
That's right.
What town?
I'm South Florida, Boca Raton specifically, which is like near FAU.
Awesome. On the spot. Not bad. You passed. And we actually had a guy a couple years ago when I was in Rocky Mountain by the name of Joe Encarnacion, who was from Lynn University, and he was one heck of a defender. So AJ looks to be, again, a super utility infielder, good with the glove, and had a little bit of time in the Atlantic League last year. So he's got some pro seasoning, which is always nice to have coming into camp. And then the second player, who actually could call an outfielder, but I'm deciding to call first baseman just for classification, is Gabe Vasquez, who the Ballers drafted at the Florida tryout camp. So he is 26-man eligible. And it'll be either him or a player that we take in the Arizona camp that will be the Ballers 26-man for the year. Gabe Vasquez had the program record in RBI at Texas Southern for a single season 2 years ago, and transferred, I believe, after that to another school. And before or after, I mean, I think everybody transfers now. I think it's part of the world we live in.
I mean, the important part, the reason the Ballers got him, of course, that they drafted him is because he played at one point at McNeese State, and you have
Yes.
at McNeese State to become an Oakland Baller.
Yes. We had 4 McNeese guys last year.
Sounds right.
5, and yeah, the more McNeese, the better, I suppose. It just sort of happens that way sometimes.
Too bad we can't get Aura, Amir Khan.
Oh, the student manager.
That's right. That's right.
Bring him out in his boombox. Now, see,
he's got the invite. If he wants to show up and they hype this team up, he'd be a perfect fit.
This is how quick things go in the NCAA tournament. That joke may not even make it to when this episode comes out, depending on how McNeese does. Actually, no, they've already lost.
They already have been eliminated. So
there we go.
They won in the first round, though. So gratitude.
Let's go to catchers very quickly. There's 2 new catchers to go along with Tyler Lozano. That is Evan Leibel, who played at West Texas A&M, and whom the Ballers saw at a pro day in Arizona and signed him out of that pro day. A couple of teams, I think, who were trying to get him. And he is a left-handed hitting catcher. He will be a first-time pro. I actually personally don't know too much about Evan. I've only exchanged a few messages with him, but we are excited to see him. And he will be the only lefty batting catcher that they'll have in camp, at least as of right now. But Dylan Tatum is the other one. And Dylan Tatum, who we have announced, is as sort of happens, another childhood friend of the Stockton crew of Lozano and Almanza. And Dylan played a couple of years with the Twins and was released. From everything I've heard, really good glove. Had a good power bat in college and wasn't able to put it together totally at the plate in the Twins system, but a good amount of time, a couple of years. The Twins did not give up on him shortly. They really worked with him for quite a bit.
Pulled up his baseball reference page for some context. See right there, born in Stockton, pride of Stockton, California, and drafted by the Twins in the 20th round back in 2021. And you look at all the teams he's played for. I mean, obviously UC Irvine, played in the Florida Complex League, the Mighty Muscles, Single A in Florida, Wichita. So he's played up to Double A, played some High A, most recently with Cedar Rapids. But this is certainly a player that has a lot of potential to have a lot of success in the Pioneer League.
So it's the dichotomy, right? It's you're good in college, you're moving up, you had success, you're experienced, you've been in minor league baseball, you're coming down. And this is the level where everybody's at. Which way are you going to move? What is your where is your drive? How are you going to get there? So Dylan had success, was drafted, which is something you can say for the rest of your life and something which a lot of these other guys only wish happened to them, but dropped out of the system. And now he's here. Other guys are just trying to break through. So Dylan now has a great opportunity to prove that he does belong back at that level and move back on up. So it'd be good to have those 3 catchers in. And we talk a lot about Tyler Lozano anyway. So I'll mention him, but we'll move on then. So those are your position player core as of, I'll date it, the 24th of March. Let's move on to the pitchers. And what I'm going to do very quickly is tell you who's coming back. Some that you do already know and some that you may not know already. Connor Sullivan is coming back. Zach St. Pierre is coming back. Luke Short is coming back. Connor Richardson, coming back. Kyle Piagic, coming back. Carson Lambert, coming back. Reed Butts, he is coming back. That's 7, which is a lot more than 2 the Ballers are bringing back from the offense. Some of that does make sense because obviously the pitching staff was one of the best in the league. And there are a lot of guys who I think are right for this level, who have had success at this level and still need to get more seasoning at this level. There are a couple of guys we obviously did not mention that tore up the league. I'll just start with 2 guys, Braden Nelson, Chandler David. The Ballers do not have the season they had without bringing in both of those guys in the middle of the season. And I'll start with Braden Nelson because he is moving on to the Long Island Ducks, which will be a good jump for him in the Atlantic League. But I think you knew, and I know you talked to Riley, our former director of scouting, who now is with the Toronto Blue Jays. I mean, my dad. Shout out Riley. You know how Riley would sit in front of that TrackMan and just go gaga over some of those pitches and shapes and stuff. Braden Nelson was one of those guys where he's like, man, this stuff is so good.
Yeah, it's just he was such a valuable piece at the end of the bullpen. He had the plus stuff on the fastball. I think it was like the two-seamer was just wicked from Braden, and just a guy who he's gonna have success at the next level. So I'm excited. I'm excited for him.
Chandler David, I want to say congrats to him. I understand he's got engaged. Also, Stephen Wilmer got engaged, if I didn't mention that as well. So congrats to both those guys. I do believe that Chandler is hanging him up. That is the last I heard. I don't keep in regular contact with all these guys, but I do believe he is moving on to the next part of his life with apparently a very good career down in Texas. Another guy I could have said in the same breath with those guys is Justin Kleinsorge, who was also added in the middle of the season, who absolutely did what he was supposed to do here as he did for a second year in a row, and who will also be moving on to the next part of his career. I believe somewhere in high finance, a well-paying job. So that is understandable. But Justin Kleinsorge, who, among other things, started the first game of the playoffs for the Ballers, and since he joined the team, probably had the lowest ERA on the team.
It was low. It was low.
I don't have the stats to back that up.
Sub-4 last year, which is just hard to do as a starter in the Pioneer League. And just had some complete game. He had a complete game shutout, I think, or was part of a combined complete game shutout last year. He had that.
I want to say that he started 3 of the 7 shutouts.
That sounds right, including I guess the latest one was against Idaho Falls, but the big one was against Boise on the 16th of August last year. He went 7, struck out 11, allowing just 3 hits and runs and a shutout. But yeah, again, part of the reason, like you said, that the Ballers pitching staff last year was one of the best in the league. It's because of the outings he gave him in the length that JK was able to provide.
It was 3 of 7, if you want to include the playoffs. 6 shutout against Yolo on the 26th of July, 7 shutout on the 16th against Boise, which you brought up, and then 5 shutout against Idaho Falls on the 28th or 29th of August. So JK will be missed. Happy trails to him in his retirement. Christian Cosby, who led all of the Pioneer League in strikeouts. I believe he is moving on to the American Association. I do not have confirmation on that, but a guy who, again, spent a lot of time in a system, needs to move up, and he will do just that. And I think that just about covers everyone. Jake Daly, who is one of our all-time favorites. I do not believe he'll be coming to camp, although I would love to see him at some point in the season. I don't think he's hung him up yet.
Yes, and the other one I would say, because he was on the injured list, would be Abraham De Leon.
Thank you. Abraham De Leon, who I also do not believe. I believe he is a free agent, but will not be coming to camp with Oakland. Abe, also who I really liked as well, who, by the way, trivia question, Nevada, you may not know this, but was the Ballers opening day starter.
I do.
All right. Let's talk about, before Aaron comes on, we're going to talk very quickly about the guys who are coming in. Now, as it was with the beginning of last season, we didn't really know who was going to be a starter, who was going to be a reliever. Elijah Pleasance started out of the bullpen last year when things got started. So I think we're going to have to figure out roles as we go along. But a couple of guys. Go ahead.
One more thing before we get to those.
Yes.
Brody Iglite was, I think, one that we didn't mention just
Did I not mention Brody Iglite? Well, he's coming back. Brody's a re-sign.
Another one.
That makes 8 then. 8 re-signs. We'll go down the list a little bit, but I'm going to save one guy for later. Ryan Baum. We'll also ask Aaron about him. I'll just start with a couple local guys. Mac Lardner. We've not announced Mac. So again, this is a sneak peek. Mac was a guy who was formerly in the Oakland A's system. He was also formerly in the St. Louis Cardinals system, but was a pitcher out of Gonzaga and does have a year left of eligibility in the Pioneer League. Big lefty, always had good numbers. And in a very A's thing to do, I think he was 7-0 when he was released. I say that as an A's fan. But he'll be joining the club, and I think he will have an opportunity to win a rotation spot. There's Mac. He's down from the Central Coast, Templeton, California, I think specifically. And just had a little bit of time with York last year coming off of an arm injury in the Atlantic League. So I'll be looking forward to seeing what he's got, and he does bring some experience. So one of two affiliated players who will be joining the Ballers for 2025. And it's not always a 1-to-1 that affiliated players do have success in the Pioneer League. I've seen both happen, but Max certainly has a good skill set, and he should do well. And I say that only because I said the same thing about Christian Cosby. It's like, oh, he's an affiliate player, he'll do great. His first start, he had 8 earned. And then I was like, wait, what's going on? And then the rest of the year, he struck out everyone. So you just never know in this game. It gets strange sometimes. Where should we go next? How about Pioneer League players who are on other teams who are on the Ballers now?
I'm drawing a blank there.
Yeah, that would I would add 2 to that list. That would be Dylan Matsuoka and Chris Massey. Those are 2 names which we also have not announced. Chris Massey was a lefty for the Northern Colorado Owls. He was a lefty specialist for them. And Frank, who now is the manager in Grand Junction, really liked his bullpen pieces. I think he pitched Dutch Landis and, what was the other guy's name? I can't think of it now. The righty who's with the Braves. He pitched, I think, the same guys every day. He had his guys he trusted. He would bring in Massey when he needed to get a lefty out, and he had success in elevation. Carter Linton, thank you.
Yeah,
Carter Linton. But Chris has success against lefties. He's going to get a shot in camp. The other is Dylan Matsuoka, who we didn't actually see, but who pitched for the Raptors and got the final 3 outs in their no-hitter against the Glacier Range Riders. If everybody forgot, there was a no-hitter that was thrown in the Pioneer League.
Believe it or not, it is possible.
And it was thrown against the Glacier Range Riders of all teams.
Ironic.
In Ogden. Mm-hmm. So I asked Dylan about that. He said it certainly was cool, but he'll get an opportunity to start, I believe, as well. And we'll see who wins the jobs in camp. But Dylan we're excited about. He's from Seattle. He had some good showings in Driveline. I believe it was our good friend Jimmy Diedrich who got a tip on him from a scout and got to talking. And I don't know if he was going to go back to Ogden or not, but he certainly was looking around, and we ultimately were able to get that contract done. So look forward to have Dylan in the mix as well. A couple relievers we haven't yet talked about. Let's save Collier for later. I've got a couple other guys on the list. Adam Bogosian is a young player out of Lafayette University who pitched in the draft league. Numbers, I would say, similar to what Elijah Pleasance had in the draft league, which is to say, not outstanding, but had a good showing on tape. He's got a pretty decent slider and a good fastball. So interested to see what he can do in camp. Ethan Paulson. Apologies. I'll fix that in post. Ethan Paulson, who also had some good showings at I believe it was Tread Fitness this year. And it's very hard to tell certain guys going from a facility to an actual dirt mound how they perform. But Ethan had a really nice showing, and we think he will do quite well. Alec Rodriguez is another name, another draft league player who may get a shot to start, may get a shot to close. I don't know. We'd have to ask Aaron. Maybe we will.
Reality is YOLO won the ship last year and had a lot of players from the draft league, so it's never a bad idea to stock up.
No. No, I think the Ballers and the High Wheelers were the two teams that hit the draft league the hardest.
And two that ended up in the playoffs. So,
yep. Alec is a hard thrower from everything we've heard. And again, we've seen videos of these guys. It's still March. We'll see when they get here. But he'll have a good shot as well. And I've got, I think, just one more on my list, unless I'm forgetting someone, which I hope I'm not, which would be really bad. And that would be Dylan Porter. Dylan Porter is a player who also was at our tryout camp, but did not sign straight out of the tryout camp, who has just recently signed. This is actually one of the few times I've heard this. He's from Richmond, so just down the street, down San Pablo. But he was with the Bananas, and now he's coming back to real baseball again. He pitched for the Party Animals, and he came out throwing 93 on the black. And it's like, yeah, we're interested.
Like, can you also dance for us? Because we'll take that too.
He showed us his thing, which is why I thought everybody needed a thing. His thing was almost like doing, I don't know if you call it a squat or whatever, but like have your back foot, like if he's a right-hand pitcher, your right foot on the rubber, and then put your left leg out and dip down until your butt's almost hitting the ground, and then get up and throw. And that was his thing.
It takes a lot of athleticism, so that's a good sign.
Yes, so that's what got him the job with Savannah. What'll get him the job with the Ballers is if he can do what he did at the tryout, which is paint with the pitches he threw. And he had a couple of good off-speed pitches as well. So those are the guys that are going to fight for the jobs in camp. It should be good competition. It's 17 pitchers right now. And there might be 13 or 14 spots. So I am very excited to see how this all turns out.
Yep, it's exciting. Again, great arms last year. It was one of the best pitching staffs in the league. No reason they can't do the same thing this season.
Should we let Aaron in now?
Let's do it.
All right, he's been waiting long enough. All right. There he is. There's the skipper. What's going on, Skip?
Oh, just getting close to a big exhibition game, and spring training's right around the corner. So a couple things to look forward to. Obviously, this big game coming up against the San Jose Giants, and just want to look good and don't get anybody hurt.
Nevada, unfortunately, you will not be able to join us for that game. You will be there in spirit.
Yes.
I will mention you in the broadcast, I promise.
Thank you. Yeah.
Aaron, we wanted to talk to you a little bit about some of the roster. We've been going over it. All the guys who've moved up, moved on, or moved on to the next part of their life. A couple guys that you found this year came from a very interesting part of the offseason when you managed a team down in the California Winter League, which people don't know is an annual showcase that lasts about a month down in Palm Springs. And you get a lot of guys who are post-college, maybe some early pro career guys. Before we talk about the two guys that we signed directly out of there, I know you're a baseball lifer, but I don't know that you've taken on someone like that in the offseason that big. So what was that all like for you?
Definitely first time for me. Definitely got a chance to hang with some baseball lifers down there that have been doing it for a while. Stan Clyburn, he's got 2,000 wins in the minor leagues. A guy, the Washington Wild Things manager, Tom Baith, did a trade with him. Bobby Brown from the Ottawa, Ottawa Champions, Titans. I guess. Titans, yeah. And so, a good chance to get down there, see some talent. I had known about the California Winter League from years ago when I did the Pacific Association, and we would, get some players from there. But, I would say that, the players down there are hungry. One thing's for sure, they're hungry. They want to play. They have desire, and there's enough talent down there that it's worthy of going to. So glad I went. I had a chance to make some connections with some Frontier League managers, Atlantic League managers, kind of get the lay of the land of indie ball from their perspective, and make a couple trades and a couple signings. So it was great. Definitely a tough thing to manage. You get your team. You can't pick your team. You get it given to you, and you play right away, and you're pretty much doing something every day. But it was a great experience.
What was the name of your team again?
The British Columbia Bombers.
How about how far you were from BC? About what, 1,500 miles?
Definitely. It's definitely got a Canadian vibe down there. Obviously, the Palm Springs area. In January, you get a lot of the Canadians that come down. And so it's definitely got that vibe. And, it was there was plenty of Canadians down there as well. So I got to meet a lot of different people from different places of the country. And, obviously parts that, are in Canada. So it was great, though. So I don't know if I'll do it again, but we'll see.
Fair enough. I mean, the season's long enough, and then you decide to manage a whole month in the off season. It's a lot of baseball, even for someone who loves it.
Well,
how many times
the Frontier League has to take a certain amount of players from there, and I think this year you're going to see some of those names do well in the Pioneer League, and some of those names do well in the Frontier League, and even maybe the Atlantic League. And we've already seen a couple guys sign affiliated contracts out of there as well. So.
I actually did forget about the 2 trades that did come of that, because I was just thinking about the signings straight off. But how often, I know it happened a couple times, how often when you're playing a game and you know that either your team or the other team, you could just sign one of these guys, did you go, boy, I think I could use him?
After about a week, when you've seen these guys play for a while, there are days there where they're not facing as good a pitching, and you're not sure if the guy is just beating up on, some really mediocre pitching. But that being said, after you've been there for about a week, you start to see, who are the really good players, and you start to see all the managers kind of gravitate towards those guys and talk to them, see, where they're from, what they're looking for. And, if you really, really like a guy, you can sign him on the spot. And so they get inundated, I think, from the best players from a weekend, and, you give your best pitch, and fortunate enough to, sign 2 guys that we really liked. And they were courted by many of the other teams as well there.
Let's get into them then. These 2 guys, be Ryan Baum and Davis Druick. What stood out about them, and what should folks expect?
Well, Ryan Baum was one of the guys that everybody was on right away. I mean, the first day of that camp, all the pitchers throw bullpens, and you saw a few of the managers go up to Baum right away, start talking to him, and he obviously wanted to pitch there for a couple of weeks and see, everything that could come from it. And so he was high on our chart. I mean, I'd known about him from a workout in San Rafael a while before that, and, knew that he would like to play for the Ballers, but he also wanted to, take care of all of his options and see what's going on. But he pitched well down there. Definitely one of the best arms. Definitely happy to have him. Looks like he's either going to be in our rotation or be a significant piece in our bullpen and start his professional career. And so fortunate that, he didn't sign an affiliated contract, and, one of these teams that is in one of these, stressed to say higher leagues like the Atlantic League, but he's exactly where he needs to be, coming right out of college from San Luis Obispo, and we're very happy to have him.
Awesome. The second guy, Davis Druick, who actually has a little bit more of a connection to one of our boys, Luke Short. But I know you had said for a while you were looking for more lefty bat to sort things out. What was it about Druick that was the guy?
Well, there was a few left-handed bats that I really liked down there, and Druick was one of them. And, there was a kid named Lucas Duda who ended up signing with the Cubs, I believe. I think maybe the
I think you're thinking of Sam Ruda. I believe Lucas Duda was a first baseman for the Mets and Royals.
Duda, yeah.
I know Lucas Duda.
I was going to say, if Lucas Duda would like to come play, he's more than welcome as well.
Sam Ruda, he was a very good-looking left-handed bat. I was high on him. Another kid named John Taylor who signed in the Atlantic League. But Druick was right there with them. Good-looking swing, good, lanky body, 6'2", 6'3". Guy can run. Guy hits for power. Great numbers at St. Edwards. Played with Short there. Shorty ended up. He ended up telling me he played with Luke. Short, and so gave Shorty a call. And Shorty said he's one of the best defenders he's ever played with. Probably the best defender he's ever played with. That kind of sparked some interest right there. The guy had an amazing game against Team China. He hit a double in the gap, a homer against really good pitching for Team China, quality professional pitching. And so I kind of had seen enough. I saw the defensive prowess of him in the outfield. He looks like a guy that could be a utility player that can play infield as well. And so the left-handed power, the good on-base percentage numbers at St. Edwards, and just felt that, a left-handed bat that we were looking for. And we're going to have some competition in spring training. And he looks like a good player that could play in this league, and we're happy to have him.
Yeah, he started like 50 games at third in addition to like 50 in the outfield. So I think, if I got my numbers right, I should have this all down if I was properly prepared. But he played a lot of third and a lot of center. So that's definitely a good sign as a utility player. We did make a couple other trades, and indie ball is, or partner league ball, whichever one you want to use, is different from other types of scenarios where you're just looking for a competitive advantage. Sometimes you are doing it to help a guy out. And depending on what the best scenario is for a certain player. And I think when we think about our players too, Nevada and I were just talking at length about some of these guys like Brett Barrera, Braden Nelson, guys who we kind of look at them and go, you don't need to be here. Go somewhere else. Go play. So we get an opportunity to acquire some guys slightly in that vein, a little bit different. But a guy that I know I'm excited about, we talked about before, you did it at least with Casey, is Daniel Harris, who's coming over from the Washington Wild Things. A guy who does have some former affiliate time, but as is the case with a lot of these guys, just got hurt and then got as part of the numbers crunch.
Yeah, and Daniel Harris comes with, some very good affiliated numbers and not a huge sample size, but, a guy who profiles well in every category of baseball. I mean, he runs well, he fields the ball well, he's got some pop in his bat, great numbers in college. I think it was a second or third team All-American. So this is a kid that, his career for 1 year was, put on hold because of an arm injury. He's back. He's going to play second base. He may move around a little bit. We've got plenty of competition at second base, but, he's definitely going to play there probably more than anywhere else, and be somebody that we consider to be a plus offensive player in the Pioneer League and put up plus, stolen base numbers. And, he comes from a program with the Wild Things. I know I don't think he played there, but, he was with them all last year. And a guy that I have a lot of faith in Tom Vaith, who puts together a very good team every year. And, you have these guys that you trust a lot. Got to know Vaith pretty well in the California Winter League. And, just judging from what he's done recently there in Washington, he doesn't bring in players that aren't going to succeed.
So you got, some signings from the CWL. We've looked at all these places that you've had to go, but sometimes players come to you. And I think the open tryout at Raimondi was a really good, great event. And not only did everyone get to try out, whoever was welcome, whether they be, kids trying to make it or big stars just wanting to have some fun on a baseball diamond. But made one signing in James Collier. what about him really appealed, and his pitch mix? I know he sported 3 really solid pitches in his outing.
Collier's a guy that was on our radar before the tryout. We were happy to see that he came. Don Wakamatsu had seen him in person once or twice. Obviously, we'd seen a lot of video on him, had some correspondence back and forth. Guy who'd been out of the game for a year, maybe, Tyler? If I'm
Yeah.
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 And, you're going to find that a lot in indie ball now. You're going to find guys that have been out of the game for a year or two that maybe they needed some rest in their arm, and they got back to, doing their throwing programs, a drive line or a tread or something like that, that all of a sudden they're now maybe a different pitcher than they were when they were in college. They took some time off and, were able to grab a couple more miles an hour and work on some things. And he's somebody that has a really good arm. I believe he's topped out at 94, 95 consistently in some of his bullpens. What we saw the other day was 91, 92 with good cut and good slider. Guy who has the ability to pitch in this league. He just needs to put it all together and be somebody that can be consistent on the mound. And if he does that, I think he'll have a start to his career. We're going to have a lot of competition in spring, but it's very nice to see somebody come to our open tryout with that type of repertoire that we see can succeed in this league.
I think we'll leave it there, boys. I think, Aaron, I want to thank you for coming on as our guest today, and we do appreciate the insight.
Absolutely, guys. Have me on anytime. Thank you.
All right, and I think, Nevada, I think we'll put a wrap on this one as well. Some good discussion today, but that's it for Bees Cast, and we will see you again next week. Thanks.